Previously on the Constitutional Record. In Episode 1, Jack Smith testified to, quote, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, unquote, that Trump committed crimes. In Episode 2, we saw that 57 senators, a majority, voted to convict Trump of inciting insurrection. It wasn't enough. In Episode 3, the Supreme Court created presidential immunity doctrine, with Justice Sotomayor warning, quote, the president is now a king above the law, unquote. Today, we look at what happened on January 20th, 2025. Welcome back to Ethos Track. I'm Sarah. This is Episode 4 of the Constitutional Record, Seditious Conspiracy, Pardoned. Hours after taking the oath of office for his second term, Donald Trump issued pardons and commutations for approximately 1,500 individuals charged in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Today, we're going to look at who was pardoned, what crimes they were convicted of, and what legal experts and judges said about what these pardons mean. This is heavy material, so let's be precise about it. The scope. The pardon proclamation titled, quote, granting pardons and commutation of sentences for certain offenses related to the events at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021, unquote, described the January 6th prosecutions as a, quote, grave national injustice, unquote. Here's what it covered. 14 individuals had their sentences commuted to time served. All other individuals, quote, convicted of offenses related to events that occurred at or near the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021, unquote, received full, unconditional pardons. Trump also directed the Justice Department to dismiss all pending cases. Approximately 1,500 people were affected. What is seditious conspiracy? Before we discuss who was pardoned, let's be clear about what seditious conspiracy is. It's defined in federal law 18 U.S.C. subsection 2384. Quote, if two or more persons in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law in the United States, unquote. Seditious conspiracy is conspiring to overthrow the government by force. It's one of the most serious crimes in federal law, short of treason. It's rarely charged because it's rarely proven. Prosecutors must show not just that violence occurred, but that there was a coordinated conspiracy to use force against the government. In the January 6th cases, juries convicted multiple defendants of exactly that. Who was pardoned? Let's be specific about who received clemency. Stewart Rhodes, founder of the Oath Keepers, was convicted by a jury of seditious conspiracy and sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. His sentence was commuted. The judge who sentenced Rhodes, Amit Mehta, said at sentencing, quote, you, sir, present an ongoing threat and peril to this country and to the fabric of this democracy, unquote. Enrique Tarrio, former chairman of the Proud Boys, was convicted by a jury of seditious conspiracy and sentenced to 22 years in federal prison, the longest sentence of any January 6th defendant. He was pardoned. Tarrio wasn't even at the Capitol on January 6th. He had been arrested 2 days earlier and ordered to leave Washington. But jurors found he organized and directed the attack. According to Justice Department data compiled before the pardons, 172 individuals pled guilty to assaulting law enforcement. 69 individuals pled guilty to assaulting law enforcement with a dangerous or deadly weapon. 4 individuals pled guilty to seditious conspiracy, and 27 total individuals pled guilty to felonies. 182 individuals pled guilty to misdemeanors. 121 individuals were found guilty at trial. Over 140 law enforcement officers were assaulted. 5 people died in connection with the attack. All pardoned. What judges said? Judges who presided over the January 6 cases responded to the pardons. Judge Royce Lamberth, a Reagan appointee who has served on the federal bench since 1987, stated during a case shortly after the pardons that in his entire career he could never recall, quote, such meritless justifications of criminal activity, unquote. Judge Amit Mehta, who sentenced Stewart Rhodes, had said before the pardons, quote, the notion that Stewart Rhodes could be absolved is frightening and ought to be frightening to anyone who cares about democracy, unquote. Judge Carl Nichols, a Trump appointee, said before the pardons that blanket pardons for capital defendants would be, quote, beyond frustrating and disappointing, unquote. These aren't partisan figures. These are federal judges, including judges appointed by Republican presidents, describing what the pardons represent, what prosecutors said. Greg Rosen, a federal prosecutor who led the Capitol siege section before the Trump administration disbanded it, resigned and told CBS News, quote, the message that the pardons send is that political violence toward a political goal is acceptable in a modern democratic society. That, from my perspective, is anathema to a constitutional republic, unquote. Anathema to a constitutional republic. An anonymous senior Justice Department official described the pardons as an act of personal retribution that gave a, quote, green light, unquote, to political violence. The pardon power. Let's address the constitutional question directly. Article 2, Section 2, gives the President power to, quote, grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment, unquote. That power is broad. Trump had the legal authority to issue these pardons. No one disputes that. But having the legal authority to do something and that thing being right are two different questions. The Brennan Center for Justice observed before the pardons, quote, pardoning the rioters is a grotesque misuse of the pardon power, because, cloaked in the appearance of lawful authority, it would put the presidential seal on crimes that go to the heart of an attack on our democracy, an effort to undo the will of the voters and seat a man who lost an election as the country's leader, unquote. And there's a specific constitutional problem here. The attack on January 6th was an attack to benefit Donald Trump. The pardons were issued by Donald Trump. The man who benefited from the attack is the one erasing the legal consequences. What happened next? Some of those pardoned have already been arrested again. Zachary Alam, who smashed the glass in the door that Ashley Babbitt tried to climb through on January 6th, was sentenced to 8 years. After being pardoned, he was arrested in May 2025 for burglarizing a home. In October 2025, he was convicted of 2 felonies for that home invasion. Daniel Ball, pardoned for his January 6th conduct, was rearrested 1 day after his pardon. Stewart Rhodes, after his release, waited outside the D.C. jail for other defendants and told media, quote, none of these people should have been here in the first place. None of them were ever tried in a fair trial, unquote. Enrique Tarrio appeared on Alex Jones' show and said, quote, "Success is going to be retribution," unquote. The message. Let's be clear-eyed about what signal was sent. People convicted by juries, after due process, with defense attorneys, with the presumption of innocence, with the right to appeal, have had their convictions erased. People who assaulted police officers, people who conspired to overthrow the government, people who attacked the Capitol to prevent the certification of an election, pardoned by the man who told him to march to the Capitol. The Brennan Center wrote, quote, "By advertising his willingness to pardon the people who supported him rather than the Constitution, Trump is sending a message to the people he is counting on to support him this go-round. If they protect him, he will take care of them," unquote. Here are today's questions. 1. The people pardoned were convicted through the American justice system. Grand juries, trials, verdicts, appeals. What does it mean when those convictions are erased by the person who benefited from their crimes? 2. Judge Lamberth, a Reagan appointee, said he'd never seen, quote, "such meritless justifications of criminal activity," unquote. When judges across the ideological spectrum express alarm, what should that tell us? 3. What message do these pardons send about the consequences of political violence in the future? The impeachment mechanism failed. The criminal prosecution was blocked by immunity. And now those who were convicted have been pardoned. But there's one more piece to this story. The infrastructure that investigates public corruption. The prosecutors, the FBI units, the institutional expertise. What's happened to that? In our final episode, The Accountability Void, we'll examine what Jack Smith called the dismantling of the Justice Department, the suppression of his own report, and where we stand heading into 2026. Analysis paralysis is the enemy of democracy. We'll end with what you can do about it. That's Monday, right here on Ethos Track. I'm Sarah. I'll be back.